Welcome everyone to Just Onside. I am your host Ahmed Badio Baghdadi, and I am joined by the usual crew: Ayub Patel, Uwais Ahmed. Gentlemen, thank you for joining. We're just going to dive straight into it this week. Champions League aftermath. So we had Chelsea, Real Madrid first on Tuesday. As expected, as predicted, it was never in the case of Chelsea beating Real Madrid and progressing into the last four of the Champions League. They had their opportunities. They carved out some chances, but as was the theme of their season, they didn't take any of them, and they were rightfully knocked out by Real Madrid, who were ruthless in their play. Guys, what do we think of that game and the game that actually, I'll come on to that after this, but Napoli AC Milan, great game to watch for the neutral. A bit of a surprise with Napoli going out. However, it's looking good for Man City or Real Madrid on their side of the draw, going through without disrespecting any of the Italian sides. So, what are our thoughts on the Tuesday games, boys?
Well,
Uh,
well, go on, you.
well, right. In terms of the Chelsea game, it's just I suppose it summed up the season. It's been a disappointing season, and the performances were disappointing. And I suppose it's a reflection of a team that's really going nowhere. So I'm disappointed for Chelsea fans. I'm disappointed for, to a certain extent, Frank Lampard as well, because I know he's not pulled up any trees, certainly in recent times. But I just hoped that he'd at least do something at Chelsea, which just picked up the mood. Obviously, I have a lad who supports Chelsea, so I was quite keen that they'd do all right. But uh, in a sense, you get what you deserve, and I think Chelsea got what they deserve. So no surprises, even though I was hoping, but it was a forlorn hope. So uh, Chelsea knocked out, and I suppose deservedly so.
Yeah, I agree. Badge, you covered it well there. I think Chelsea had some great opportunities in the first half. You saw that big opportunity for Kante. He's got to hit the target there, and then even Cucurella at the far post with Courtois making a great save. And to your point, Badge, um, it's a kind of a tale of their season, just not being able to kind of convert and score uh, the number of goals that you need. And once you got into the second half, Real just went from kind of took on a bit more confidence that they'd kind of managed a difficult period in the game. I mean, Cucurella, I do blame him for the Chilwell red card in the first game, and then even for that first goal. I know Chalobah's dived in there when he probably perhaps shouldn't have against Rodrigo, but I'm still not sure what Cucurella was doing, trying to close a player down, trying to run 30 yards, just wasn't never going to get there. But Real Madrid in the end, class personified. And deserved victors over the two legs. As for the other game, that was the one, wasn't it, in terms of the tie being in the balance? I thought a game full of drama. Napoli started really well. You fancy if they'd scored early when they were a little bit on top, they could have really taken the initiative. Giroud obviously then misses the penalty, keeps Napoli well in it. But then that man, once again, we've mentioned him a few times on this podcast, one of your favourite players, Badge, Leao. You mentioned he can go left, he can go right. Unbelievable run.
He's dynamite, that lad.
Absolutely. He's a really interesting player to watch as well. It's sometimes difficult to understand, but his running and his dribbling, it'd be interesting to see if he did make it into the Premier League, how he would perform. But an unbelievable run, lays it on a plate for Giroud into a pretty much an empty nets, and at that point you did feel that it was going to be curtains for Napoli if they'd scored that penalty, the one missed by I think Kvaratskhelia. I think it was 82nd minute.
Yeah.
If he scores that, then you just fancy maybe that Napoli would have got something to take it into extra time. But in the end, probably Milan over the two legs. Maybe, I mean, they won those big moments. And the goal from Osimhen just came too late. So, yeah, deserved victory for Milan as well, I guess, over two legs.
Yeah, the Milan game, it was like I was predicted. They were not for Napoli. They were the worst opponent they could have got. They really were. They know how to beat them. They just do. It was a great performance again from them. Like you say, Rafael Leao, an incredible solo run to set up Giroud for the finish. And you're right about his running. He has a bit of an unorthodox like style of getting past people. But my God, when he gets going, and pace, power. I'm sure many clubs will be circling around him this summer. For Napoli, It shouldn't take away anything from their season. They've had a great season domestically and in Europe. I think a lot of people will be taken by surprise that they didn't get through this. I think most neutrals were actually vouching for them. So it's a bit of a disappointment, but on the whole, congrats to AC Milan. Great Champions League pedigree. It's nice to see them in the final for yet again. For Chelsea and Ayub's lad, I'd say commiserations, and I would say I'd see you in Europe next season. But we know that's not going to happen.
You know that's the case.
But we move on to Wednesday's games, and Man City away to Bayern. Again, this one was pretty much wrapped up in the first leg with City taking in a 3-0 lead. Easy, not too much in sense to talk about in that game. With I think Upamecano had a shocking outing for Bayern Munich over the 2 legs, not just last night, and it was pretty comfortable for City on the whole. Haaland again continuing his goal scoring record. It's outrageous in the Champions League at the moment. The amount of goals to games that he's got. And in the other game, we have Inter and Benfica. Inter, I knew it'd be a bridge too far to claw back a 2-0 defeat for Benfica. And Inter did what they had to. In the end, they did concede 2 late goals to make the game 3-3, but it was never in threat. And we've got a Milan derby in the semi-finals, gents, which I, for one, am excited about. But your thoughts?
On the Man City, I mean, I've called it. Man City will win the Champions League, and I think the performance just shows again it was getting the job done. Simple as that. 3-0 lead, get the job done. You don't have to pull up any trees. You just play the game. Just make sure that you don't give any impetus to Bayern, and I think they managed the game beautifully. And I really do think once Yaya Toure lifted the curse, it was going to happen. So I'm so confident. If I was a City fan, I'd be booking a hotel in Istanbul.
I honestly thought you were going to say if I was a betting man. Even if I'm a City fan.
Yeah, so for me, it's City. City will just win the cup. I can't see anybody else competing with them. I think they've just got every base covered. They've got
They're playing Real Madrid at you.
But still, I mean, we're talking the best league in the world is the Premier League. Simple as that. And I think the best club at this moment in time is Manchester City. I think what they have is 21, 22, 23 players who would fit into any side in the world. And I think that's their strength. They've just got so many good players. I think they've just hit peak form right at the right time, both in the league and in the Champions League as well. So I'd be surprised. I'd be really surprised. I know obviously European competition is quite tough, and you can't underestimate the teams that are in the Champions League, but I can't see anybody getting the upper hand on Man City.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Man City they pretty much got the job done in the first leg. It was simply about being professional. Bayern Munich started quite well. That big opportunity for Sane, if he puts that away, again, similar to the Chelsea game, when you're trying to recover a big first leg deficit like Bayern Munich are, you probably need to score early. It's more just to build the confidence that you can achieve it, and you can kind of go into half time, try and manage it 1-0, try and get 2 goals in a second of that kind of process. I think Tuchel spoke about it before the game, about just trying to win both halves and trying to break it down like that. They had their moments early on, but they really needed to score during those moments when they had those opportunities. It's interesting, Ayub, that you mentioned obviously the number of quality players that they have, and of course that stands you in good stead over the course of a season. But I think what's really interesting now is that Pep has a real comfort with his best 11, and we know what that is. And I think if he can put that first 11 out, the way he's got those kind of 4 centre-backs playing at the back, with Stone stepping out, we know what that is. Probably just maybe Bernardo Mahrez, which is the only decision he has to make. He's really settled on that middle 3 as well, with Rodri, Gundogan, and Kevin De Bruyne. So I'm with you. They'll take some stopping, and they will be favourites again, just like they were last year against Real Madrid in the semi-finals. But yeah, Real Madrid, it's the craziest phenomenon, their love affair with the European Cup. So it should make for a magnificent tie, and whoever comes through that will be strong favourites in the final for sure.
So we're not giving any of the Milan clubs any chance.
Well, there'll be strong favourites. I think we can all agree to that. I think.
Yeah, we can. Now it all depends on whether Pep has a little tinker or not, like he's done in the past, which has usually cost him. He loves making these out of left field decisions when it comes to getting into the latter stages of the Champions League. So we'll have to see. And whenever Real Madrid are put as underdogs, I think they love it and they thrive off it. So I still have Real Madrid going all the way, but we will see when we get to that. Switching gears, gentlemen. We're moving on to a topic which is actually quite. I feel like it's going to spark much debate, especially out of US. It's Rio Ferdinand's comments on basically who would have had the better season if things wrap up in a certain way. So his quote being, if Arsenal don't win the league and Man United finish third and win just the one trophy, which was the League Cup, they have had a better season. Now, having had these conversations with Uwais in the past, not on podcast, I know his stance on the matter, but I am sure he will enlighten us now with how he feels on that. But before we get to him, what are your thoughts on that? If United do come out of this season with a League Cup and finish third, is that a better season to Arsenal if they finish second and trophyless?
Absolutely, straightforward. It's easy, yes. I've always said football is about winning. It's about pots. At the end of the day, what do you get for finishing second? I'd rather finish third, have a pot. I don't even think it's an argument. I think it's quite straightforward, quite simple. You ask fans, what do they want? Do they want to finish second or do they want to win a trophy? I think if you're talking about second and sixth, there's a different story. But if you're just talking about second and third place, but the third place team wins a trophy, to me, you've got to be an insane supporter to say, yes, second, but no trophy.
So
that's what it's all about, sports.
Agreed. So let me ask you a question. Leeds, if this season they'd finished 18th but won the Carabao Cup, would you have taken it?
That's different though. That's not really, because we're talking about finishing 18th means you get relegated, so you've lost something. Yeah. So I think it's a slightly unfair. If you said to me 17th and Carabao Cup, I'd bite your hand off.
Well, you're neither going to get 17th nor win the Carabao Cup, so I think we can move on from that.
Wow.
I think.
Before you go, because I know you're itching, so I want to make you wait just a little bit longer.
Of course.
But I guess you could take this in two ways. You could look at it in terms of progress, or you could look at it in terms of silverware. So there is that slight caveat to it. And I know which angle you're going to hit me with. So I'm going to let you go ahead, and the floor is yours, and tell us why Arsenal would have had the better season.
Well, you don't know I'm going to argue that, but I did want to actually get your thoughts on the matter first. But if you want me to go first, that's fine.
Go.
Yeah, I mean, look, 21st of May 2016. It was a Saturday. Do you know what happened on that day, Badge?
21st of May
2016. It was a Saturday. Think about it. Footballing season, 21st of May. Man United won the FA Cup that day, beating Crystal Palace 2-1. They fired Louis van Gaal literally the same evening, the next day. They made it official on that Monday. They've spent, obviously, that season or those couple of years when he came in after David Moyes from the 2014-15 season, a 15-16 season, they spent £280 million, accounting for inflation, that's about £400 million. Why do you think they fired him?
Yes. Oh, is this not rhetorical?
No, it's not a rhetorical question.
It's not rhetorical.
Why do you think?
I know why they fired him, because we were playing some absolutely boring, mundane football, and we weren't really progressing much. And we were I wouldn't say lucky to be in fourth, but if we didn't finish in the top four, it wouldn't have been a crime given our performances. And when you sign players like Radamel Falcao, Angel Di Maria, it's not really acceptable to be playing the football we were playing. So I believe that's why I think the decision was made before the FA Cup final that he was a goner, but they let him see it out, and he delivered the FA Cup. Fair play to him. But I see where you're going to go with this, but I'll hand back to you.
So in the 2 seasons that he was manager of Manchester United Football Club, they finished 4th and 5th, on average 16 points behind the top, not having challenged for the title any of the 2 seasons. And clearly, the Man United board saw fit at the time to relieve him of his duties, because I imagine they thought, given what you just said, that the playing style wasn't conducive to at some point challenge for the title. Thereafter came Jose Mourinho for a 2.5-year stint. In his first season, he wins the Carabao Cup against Southampton in the final. He wins the Europa League the same year, famously, if you remember, winning 2-0 against Ajax, if memory serves. And then in the second year, he loses the FA Cup final, losing to Chelsea. I think Hazard scored. Why do you think they fired Jose Mourinho after 2.5 years?
That was nothing to do with performances or anything. It was to do with the fact he wasn't backed, and he made it publicly known he wasn't backed. So I wouldn't.
Well, he had a net
I
spend
wouldn't take that into account.
True. Well, he had a net spend of 285 million during those couple of years. So
Yeah, true. But then the targets he wanted, he was not going to get, especially after giving him the long-term contract that they did. They then decided, we're not going to land the targets you want. And therefore, you know what he's like once he gets disillusioned, he's not one to shy about it. So yeah, that's why that went downhill.
So
But back to you.
So in his first season, he finishes 24 points off the top, and he finishes 6th. In his second season, he finishes 2nd, 19 points off the top. And if you remember, he famously said that's probably one of his best achievements ever. And then obviously in his third season, he got fired in December when he was 19 points off the top after 17 games. I would argue that they fired him because, again, you're right. He had started to make a few headlines, or a lot of headlines. I think bringing a lot of negative publicity, let's say, to the club. And it was clear that he was pretty much similar to maybe Conte this season, looking for a way out potentially, and he was shown the door. I would argue it's because that they saw that this man, who regardless had brought us 2 trophies, wasn't the man to take us back to Premier League glory. Thereafterwards, obviously, you've got Ole, who comes in. He does well, but across his kind of 3.5 seasons, he finishes 6th with 32 points behind the top. 3rd, 33 points off the top. Second,
well, 6th was when it wasn't a full season.
Yeah, true. Agreed. So Mourinho got sacked halfway through the season. They were 19 points off the top. He then proceeds to finish 32 points off the top. So obviously they worsened, or at least the gap got wider, should I say, from the top. So you're right, it wasn't a full season. But in his 2 full seasons, he finishes 33 points off the top and 12 points off the top. He then gets sacked during the next season, just before November. If you remember, Carrick took over for a few games, and then Ranić saw the rest of the season. He also had a Europa League final loss to Villarreal, famously on penalties. Unfortunately, I think it went all the way through to the goalkeepers 11-10 on penalties. Why do you think they fired Ole after 3.5 years?
He was not delivering the goods, unfortunately. I think he got to a stage where he didn't do too badly, given he finished 2nd and 3rd. But I think the Europa League final was rather damning.
Well, you say damning, but the other two managers delivered trophies, and it didn't save them from getting fired. So why was it so damning that he lost the final?
No, because we can come to that. If you want me to get to that part now, that's fine. Basically, with Mourinho, even though we finished 6th, we got 2 trophies. And then the next season, we finished 2nd. Yes, we finished 2nd. However, we came out of that with nothing. And we were miles behind the leaders. So I know he's done an incredible job with the squad he had at the time. He did do a good job. But at the end of the day, you're marked on your trophies and your silverware, as well as the way you're progressing the side. And we weren't really progressing, I'd say. Our football was atrocious. I think that was the worst football. It's worse than Van Gaal's football. Van Gaal's was boring. This was painful at times. And he was losing the dressing room and all sorts. There was all sorts of factors that went into it. So it wasn't just where we finished or what we won.
I personally think football was the last reason. I think there was more to it, much more to it. I think you've alluded to it, Bash, but I think it was more to do with the politics. I think it was more to do with the character Mourinho, what he was saying. And I, for 1 minute, don't think that the board sat down and said, "All right, it's about a football." It was more. I think it was personal. I think for some reason, Mourinho is not an easy character. He's too big a character for owners just to sort of manage. I think once Mourinho decides that this is something that's not going his way, it's going to be a difficult challenge for the board. So I think that was more the reason. I think he did a fantastic job considering the circumstances. I still don't think, in terms of the argument that you're making, it strengthens it by mentioning Mangal and Mourinho. I don't think so. I still maintain that ultimately, for a football fan, it's about silverware.
Well,
Yeah, because to your point, Uwais, I would say more people would have enjoyed the campaign where we finished sixth, but with 2 trophies, than when we finished second with nothing and miles behind the leaders.
listen, everyone's entitled to their own view when it comes to kind of evaluating their own club's fortunes. I perhaps just see it differently. And I laid all that out not to be kind of facetious or anything like this. I laid it all out because the board of Manchester United Football Club told me that they need or they want to be able to see enough sufficient progress that their team can sustain a league campaign or to be able to challenge for titles. I will never ever talk about winning Premier League titles. I will always talk first about challenging for Premier League titles. Why? Because there is not entitlement to simply just win a Premier League title. You have to be able to challenge and suffer first before being able to win it, to be able to go all the way and win it there afterwards. In the 10 years since Ferguson is coming up to I think it's a full 10 years this summer, since Ferguson delivered that last Premier League trophy, they have not challenged for the title or the Premier League title once. And let's not forget, when Ferguson came in to charge or came in as United manager, what was the famous line? He wanted to knock Liverpool off their perch. He wasn't talking about EFL Cups. He wasn't talking about FA Cups. He was talking about league titles. And he delivered on that promise. 20 Premier League titles, currently to Liverpool's 19. And what I'm simply trying to say, and I take your point, Ayub, about how regarding the trophies and what have you, but the fact is, like I said, the United board have told me that they didn't necessarily see that as a successful season. So if they didn't see it, why should I be able to see it like that? And the truth of the matter is, all of us at the start of the season always want, if we're supporting big clubs, apologies, Ayub, but if we're supporting big clubs, we want our teams to be challenging for the Premier League title. Now, what Rio Ferdinand went on to say in that soundbite, which is where it was a totally different argument, was, well, where he said, well, if the Arsenal players would be absolutely devastated and disappointed if they missed out on the title. Well, of course, that's a different argument. That's not about who's had the better season. And the question is, and the point is, that Arsenal this year, from start to finish, have been top of the Premier League. And what it's told me is that they can withstand, so far, although the last few games they've had a wobble, they can withstand the pressure that it takes to go up against a team like Manchester City. Will that be the case next year? Who knows? I'd like to think so, but the proof's in the pudding and we'll see. But the idea that Manchester United, who in and of itself have had a good season, let me be very clear, I think they've made some great progress under a really, really good manager. And I'm sure we'll come on to that at some point in future episodes about his credentials and what he's brought to Manchester United Football Club. But he talked about one trophy, Carabao Cup. I think United have a chance to win at least one more, maybe two. Challenging for the title is where it's at. It's always been. That's always been Manchester United's MO. It's about winning titles and challenging for titles. And even when they've not won it, they've lost a few real last day ones where they've come runners up, and they deserve credit for that. But to somehow change the kind of narrative to the point where if it's one trophy, well, no, for the big clubs, it's about challenging. And if you've challenged, you might say we've not got anything to show for it, but that's only because there's a narrative out there that you always need some sort of silverware. Well, Arteta won silverware in the first year, but the idea always was to build to a point where they could challenge for the title. And I would argue this season they have. And for that, I would argue that they are further ahead in their development than Manchester United.
But in terms of just, can I ask, Ois, as not you, but if we were to do a straw poll of Arsenal fans, and we said to them, right, okay, you're going to finish fourth, but you're going to win a trophy, or do you want to just finish second and not win anything, no trophies? what do you think the majority of Arsenal fans, where if we think about it, that really is what it's all about. It's about the fans. So what do you think most fans would say?
Well, I'll keep this short and sweet. I can't speak for the majority of fans. Though, we all see football differently, so I can't speak for the majority of fans. Of course, when you're in the running for a Premier League title, it's not. Let me be very clear. I don't want to show any kind of like weak mentality to say, "Oh, well, it's been a good season." No, when you're in the hunt all the way, you want to see the job through. Badge talked about it on the last episode. Absolutely through. You've got to be able to see games through to see the title charge through. You want to see it through. Absolutely. Majority of fans may well say, "Oh yeah, finishing fourth," but the way I see it is, would you rather be in the race and fail than not be in the race at all? I'd rather be in the race, and if that means that over the next 2 seasons, Arsenal challenge for the title, and I mean this honestly, if Arsenal challenge for the title over the next couple of years, yet fall agonisingly short, of course that'd be tough to take. Let me be very clear; it's not something I accept, but that tells me that we're right there. We're knocking on the door, and I don't want to go slightly off topic. But I remember when Chelsea won the Champions League, the famous Didier Drogba goal against Munich. That was nowhere near the caliber of Chelsea teams that had come before. But I always thought they kept knocking on the door. And at some point, the door opened and they won a Champions League. And you would argue over those 6-7 years, you could argue that team merited winning a Champions League. And that's my point. If you're knocking on the door consistently, that tells you you're doing something right. And you may not win the Premier League title. They're going up against an incredible team, as Simon Jordan, I think, pointed out in the Daily Mail. But I can't speak for the majority of fans, but I know what I want. I want my team consistently developing to a point where they can challenge for top honours, and top honours always starts with the Premier League.
I see your points in certain areas. Just a few things. You pointed out that, and that's why you think Arsenal are ahead of United in their development. I mean that's crystal clear, given Arteta's had three plus years to work on where he wants Arsenal to be, and majority of people did not back him and did not think he would deliver the results that he's been doing this season. So credit in that sense, but he has had a much longer time to implement his methods, whereas Ten Hag's had this season, and this season without really having a striker. I think if he does have a striker this season, United are definitely closer to the top two than they are at the moment, in my opinion. One of the other points you made was the Chelsea team. That Chelsea team did, however, deliver. Whether they weren't as good as the teams of previous years, they did end up delivering a Champions League. And you're right, you do have to be in the race, but at the same time, cycles do not last very long right now, especially with the amount of big clubs. It's not just the days of United, Arsenal, or United, Chelsea, or even City, Liverpool in recent years. It's more so you're going to have a rejuvenation of Liverpool at some point. You're going to have a rejuvenation of Chelsea at some point. United look like they will be in the hunt next season as well. So I don't know how many years Arsenal will have at this. Arteta may even be swayed by like jobs in Spain. You just don't know. So for them, and I think they've put all their eggs in the league basket. So they've kind of seemed like they didn't mind whether they were knocked out of the Europa. They wanted to concentrate their focuses. They wanted to concentrate their efforts on the Premier League. So to do that, sacrifice your other cups and your other competitions means you need to go all out and win this Premier League title. Whereas if they don't, then it is just another season where, don't get me wrong, they have made huge progress in terms of where they were last season and where they are this season. But to mentally then for the players reset and go again next season after leading for the entirety of this season, if they were to lose it, that is a huge hammer blow. And whether they have the mental fortitude to come back from that is another thing. But just going back to Rio's point on who would have the better season, I think given its second and third place, I know there's a considerable there's a gap there for sure between third and second, but I think
it's 11 points currently.
It's 11 points currently, but if things continue as they are, and United do see out the season in third, but Arsenal do slip up, I think that gap will be even less. So to Rio's point, I do think you could say the argument is definitely there to be made that United would have had the better season, especially if they get another trophy in the bag, as well as the progress we've made. Because you compare this team to last season's team at this same point in the year, it's night and day. It's night and day. So I think in that sense, I think you could argue that United would have had the better season. If Arsenal win the league, it's no contest. But
there are a few points I just want to come on to, just on some of the points that you made. Firstly, quite often we look at points as the barometer of perhaps where a team's at. Ultimately, the table doesn't lie at the end of the season. I also think goal differences, because that tells you ultimately whether your club's playing well enough consistently, whether your team's playing well enough consistently. You can't really fake goal difference, because it's very rare that you're simply going to be able to hammer teams and then yet lose all these kind of narrow games to kind of make sure you fall short of where you need to be. Plus 43 goal difference to plus 9, Arsenal to United. It tells me that Arsenal have a more consistent way of playing. You may argue that United have had some hammerings at various points this season, but I could make the argument that that's also because at times they do have a soft underbelly where they'll sometimes maybe just let go of the rope. And look, this is not a United bashing. You know my views on Manchester United.
No, of course not. Of course not.
They've taken on huge strides. The other thing that I do...
But I think that goes to the point as well that they've played the season without a striker. We've had Wout as our main striker for half the season. And before that, we were having to play Rashford there or someone else out of position because Martial's not fit enough. So I think that lack of goals is also... that's where it stems from, really.
But there is something else I wanted to push back on. You suggested that the other clubs will make big inroads next season. I don't disagree with you. I absolutely do not disagree with you. But it's interesting that we put faith in something that hasn't happened, yet we lose faith in something that we've actually seen with our own eyes and evidenced. So what I mean is, we're suggesting Chelsea are going to get their act together and come.
No. So I'm saying there's a chance that they could come back. Because they're just pumping money and they'll get back to where they want to be. But I'm not saying it's a guarantee.
But based on what you've seen this season, what's more likely? Arsenal to perform as they have this season in terms of the football. I don't mean necessarily in terms of the points haul. I mean in terms of the football, because ultimately it's your performances that generates results. Or is it more likely that Arsenal will somehow fall away and Chelsea will somehow finish up? But my point I'm simply just trying to make is it's a leap of faith. And we can make that argument that Chelsea will recover, but yet we seem to somehow give more onus and more emphasis on that. Say Chelsea, Liverpool, they'll all have these big kind of swings and improvements, which I think they will, by the way. But yet we somehow use that as, well, this is Arsenal's best opportunity because all these other clubs are somehow going to come to the fore. I think they come to the fore, but I don't think the second argument can be made simply because the evidence is that Arsenal right now are better than Chelsea, are better than Liverpool over the course of a season, and they've got the younger squad in the Premier League. So again, everything's set there for a good 2-3 year run where you can be relatively consistent. And the only other argument I would make, just to finish off, is the point about, you said it's going to be devastating if they lose. I agree. I think it will be because they've led from start to finish. But Liverpool managed it where they fell agonizingly short and then romped to a top Premier League title, their first in so many years, by beating City by 18 points, I think it was, in that COVID year. So it can be done. It can be done through consistency of performance. And what I've seen from Arsenal this year is their ability to grind out consistent performances, which will end up resulting in more points.
No, it can be done. You're right. There's no mistaking. They've been incredible this season. It would be a big hammer blow only for the fact that they've led the entire season.
Agreed.
So to fall short right at the running, that takes a lot for the players to recover from that. And listen, Chelsea may not be back next season. Liverpool may not be back next season. But they're all potential blocks for Arsenal to then push on. Or they may just have more competition up top next season. So for them to not win it from this stage, I think would be a huge hammer blow. And if they were to finish second, back to the point, just on a final, just to wrap it up, Ayub, who'd have the better season?
Man United. So, I always obviously says that he can't answer for other fans. I can't answer for other fans, but I'm pretty certain if you ask most fans, they'd probably be of the position that they'd rather finish third, win a pot, than finish second and have nothing.
So
Lewis,
I will just finish off with one question to you, Badge. Next season, both clubs have the same exact season. Who do you take, Arsenal or United? Next season.
what do you mean?
So next season, this time next year, the three of us, hopefully, are here on this podcast, and the two clubs are exactly in the same position. Manchester United have won a Carabao Cup. They're in the Europa League, which would mean they've come third in their group stage for Champions League. But they're in exactly the same position. Arsenal 4 points ahead, having played a game extra or whatever it is. Manchester United third, but without any real chance to really close in on the title. Next season, if both clubs are in the same exact position, who will have had the better season?
And none of them have won anything.
No, exactly as it's happened right now. So United have
United won a League Cup. Yeah.
Correct. Next season. Because that's
next
important.
season. No, but next season is different because the expectations are different. I expect United to make more of a challenge for the league. Even though we will have won a cup, which is great.
But then it's funny because
true,
it's funny about expectation though, because Arsenal were not expected to challenge for the Premier League title. Yet having done so, we're not necessarily giving them any extra credit, but that's fine.
Yeah, but they're coming out of it essentially the best losers. Essentially. And you say this about the probability of if you've watched Arsenal this season, so the likelihood is you have more faith in the fact that Arsenal next season will replicate as opposed to Liverpool or Chelsea may come back into it. But
Arsenal will need to prove that they can do that.
But the season prior, Arsenal were absolutely nowhere to be seen and weren't playing great stuff, whereas the other clubs like Liverpool were higher up. But you see how it switches. So it can happen. It can happen,
Sure.
but their chance it's more of a mental thing for me for them to recover. If they lose, they may. If they go ahead and win the league title, they've had the better season, no doubt. If they don't, I'm giving it to United the edge. Not to sound biased, but I genuinely think like third, a year into the rebuild, third place will probably be not that far off Arsenal in terms of points, and with a cup or two. I know which one I'm taking.
It made for a good discussion.
Yeah. Of course. It made for a great discussion. Moving on to the Premier League this weekend, we have some interesting fixtures. We discussed a couple of days ago, Leeds United away to Fulham is our 12:30 kickoff on Saturday. But before we even get to that, we have Arsenal Southampton tomorrow. Blessed day, Eid day for those celebrating around the world. Eid Mubarak from us guys. But Arsenal, do they bounce back after 2 games consistently dropping a 2-0 lead? Do they bounce back and get the W against Southampton? If anything, it's a perfect tonic for them. Without any disrespect to Southampton, but given how their season's panning out, this is the perfect game, it seems, for Arsenal to bounce back. But just your thoughts. Uwais, I know you've actually. Feel free to chime in, but your thoughts on whether Arsenal can recover with a statement performance.
Are you asking me?
Hey, either of you.
Oh, that's
either
unusual.
Yeah,
All right,
free,
okay. I
free
thought
to
it's rude to ask me first. Or right, they've played well the last 2 games. I think the results haven't gone their way, but they've certainly played well for large portions of the game. I think they play exactly the way that they have done. They'll win the game easily. I can't see. I mean, Southampton are bottom for a reason. They just haven't got the ammunition to cope with what Arsenal are going to dish out. So I expect an easy result for the Arsenal. And you're right, absolutely right. I think after the 2 games that they've had, you can't wish for a better opponent than Southampton. So it's, in my mind, it's an easy victory.
Well, after a 5-1 and 6-1, maybe Leeds, but we move.
Yes, that's true. That's true. Yeah, fair point. A low blow, but fair point.
That is some cheap shot. Kick a man when he's down.
I've been down for a long time.
Yeah, there's not much I can add. It's a must-win game for Arsenal. They'll probably still be missing Saliba. I think Zinchenko might be back. It's a must-win game. There really isn't much more.
So what if they slip up and get a draw against Southampton? What do you think then going into the City game? The
They would lose.
mindset of the Arsenal.
They will lose. They will lose. No, you can't draw away to West Ham and home to Southampton in the title running and expect then to go to arguably, well, not arguably, the best team in Europe. Real Madrid fans may not like me to say that, but Manchester City are on course for a treble, so they are the best team in Europe, in my opinion. They would lose. I think they would lose comfortably.
It's funny that, isn't it? They're the best team in Europe, but they're not currently the best team in England.
Some would make the argument that they are the best team in England, and maybe we've only got days to wait until that statement can be kind of unequivocally said. But yeah, it's a must-win game for Arsenal. They really have to. There's no other excuses. And to be honest, it's a big game for Southampton on the other side. They are running out of games to make any inroads to try and get themselves out of it. And even games at the Emirates are not games that they can simply write off at this stage. So big implications on that game at both ends of the table, I think.
And then we have Fulham, Leeds United on Saturday, early afternoon kickoff, which has the potential to ruin Ayub's weekend, which is fantastic. Before we go to Ayub, Uwais, you've watched Leeds in the last few weeks. How do you think they are going to fare away to Fulham?
You might want to cover your ears, Ayub, but I just think there's something about Leeds right now that worries me, just in terms of that fragility, that state of mind. There were some comments from Gracia about he was a bit non-committal, a bit coy around the non-selection, which I found interesting. Max Werber might be back. I think there's some talk he could be. Tyler Adams
needs to be back.
Absolutely. Tyler Adams looks like his season may well have ended. So, yeah, I think it's difficult. I think Fulham, their season was petering out, but a great performance against Everton. I think if Leeds could just get a draw, I think that would be a real positive result. But I'm struggling to see it. But this Leeds team, it's weird. I remember away to Wolves thinking, and then they produce a great performance. They need something like that. Back to basics, be solid. Craven Cottage type pitch. So I think they can get up the pitch quickly as well. Fulham are not necessarily a team that's going to keep a clean sheet themselves. So I think they've got the ammunition to hurt them. It's whether they've got the mental fortitude to really kind of stick in for 95 plus minutes to get a great away result at this stage.
I mean, I'm going to touch on your point about the mentality. I think that's where the issue is. I mean, I don't think they're a great side. Certainly, you don't spend 2 seasons fighting relegation if you're a good side. But certainly, mentality-wise, it's been woeful the last 2 weeks or the last 2 games. I think it could be a blessing in disguise playing at Fulham. I think the 2 home games the atmosphere has been quite toxic. Not at the start, but certainly I think with the way that the games have panned out, it's become very toxic. So I think Fulham is not too bad. It's not a hostile ground. It's quite a quaint ground. So in a sense, you shouldn't expect the players to be full of trepidation. In terms of availability, I mean, when I've gone through the transcript of the press conference from Grazia, Werber, I think, is available. I think Nonta is available as well, which they have to play. Huge. I think there is no doubt they have to play. He was rather. I mean, he's never been. You're right. He's very non-committal, and in terms of questioning as well. I mean, this is another criticism I have of reporters in the UK. Some of the questions that they ask are just. It's very. It hardly poses any concern for a coach, because he never really answered why they've imploded. What is it? He was asked a question about mentality, and he was trying to bat it away, saying it's not really an issue. Now, fair enough. A coach can't say, yeah, these players are shot, which is not really what the players want to hear.
I'm glad you used the correct vowel there, but carry on.
But sometimes I think maybe they need a rocket up the backsides. I think these players, you can't mollycoddle players indefinitely. And I think maybe some of these players just need to be told some harsh truths, because this is the Premier League. This is not the Conference League. This is not some Mickey Mouse league. This is the best league in the world. And I think maybe, but Grazia perhaps doesn't want to take a chance and destroy already the fragile confidence of these players. But it's a massive, massive game. I think one of you guys said it, a draw. Probably you're right. I'd take a draw. But then we've got a huge game a couple of days afterwards against Leicester. I mean, I'm just checking the other fixtures because, excuse me, I said at the last one that I'm relying on three worst teams. So that's a reason why I'm looking at the other fixtures. You've got Crystal Palace at home against Everton. You've got Leicester and Wolves. Wolves have had a resurgence. Maybe they might take the foot off the gas thinking we've done enough, which creates a window for Leicester. I hope not. So Liverpool playing Nottingham Forest, I expect a Liverpool win. So apart from the Fulham Leeds game, the other two games, obviously my interest will be on Crystal Palace Everton, Leicester Wolves. So I'm hoping that perhaps recent form continues, which just gives us a little bit of breathing space. But certainly from a Leeds point of view, I'm incredibly worried. I think the fans are worried. And I think rightly so. I think the proof is in the pudding. The performances, the last two performances, the abject performances, give nobody who supports Leeds United any confidence. So I'd be amazed if they got anything from Craven Cottage.
To be fair, it's a club that are currently sat in 10th. They've not really got much else to play for at the moment, so it could be a blessing this game. Like it's a good team to come up against at this point in the season. They might have taken their foot off the gas a little. Up until the weekend, they hadn't won in their last five. I think they lost their last five straight, and then they won on the weekend, which, I mean, that might not look good for you guys. But it's a place where you can go and definitely get a result. And especially with Palace hosting Everton, Palace have picked up majorly. Then their attackers have suddenly found how to score again. Eze has been in fine form for them. So Everton, that is going to be a tricky place for them to go and get any kind of result at the moment. Wolves, I think, are pulling away they'll pull away just enough. They've got just enough quality in there. Their manager is, again, one I was very surprised that ended up at Wolves. Much like Unai Emery, I was surprised he ended up at Villa. Lopetegui has had huge roles in recent years. Real Madrid, Sevilla. He was meant to manage Spain, yeah, but because he took the Real job, they axed him, which was a bit harsh.
On the eve of a major tournament, yes, I would think so.
Yeah, that's true as well. So yeah, I think they will just pull away. So the results could work in your favour this weekend, Ayub, I feel.
I mean, that's what I'm hoping for. I mean, I said it before that last year we depended on three teams being worse than us, and I think it's exactly the same. So a really, really big few days for Leeds United Football Club, Fulham, and then it's a monster game against Leicester. That's huge.
Oh, and by the way, I hope you have some choice words for Uwais on the next one if Arsenal fail to beat Southampton.
Well, if you thought I was slightly volatile on the last one, if Southampton get a result against the Arsenal, then it's there's no holes barred. There's no holes barred at all.
I already feel a stomachache coming on, so I might not make it myself. Badge, I want to hear your thoughts also on the Manchester United game tonight, but also the big games over the weekend in the FA Cup, and I want to really get your thoughts on that. What's really interesting about the Premier League fixtures this weekend is that all 8 games have major implications across the board. Every single game has something kind of lying on it. We've covered Arsenal, Southampton, Fulham, Leeds, Brentford, Villa. We spoke about it where Villa are kind of dark horses to try and really push for 4th spot. That'll be an interesting game. Brentford, I think, have lost a few on the bounce. Palace v Everton. Again, implications at the bottom part of the table. Palace are probably safe, especially with their goal difference. I think they're 9 clear, make that 10 with the goal difference, I would say. But they're probably clear, but they can really damage Everton with another home victory. You've then got kind of Leicester Wolves, similar situation. Wolves probably safe, but again, Leicester second to bottom, desperate for points. Big impact. You really feel Leicester are going to have to take 3 points at home against Wolves. Liverpool Forest. Liverpool, a real outside shot of making 4th spot, but they would hope perhaps that Spurs pick up or Spurs Newcastle games a draw, and they've got to keep winning. Again, that would resign Forest further into kind of relegation trouble. You've then got Bournemouth v West Ham. I think that's 14th v 15th. I think that is. Again, Bournemouth in some real good form. West Ham picked up a point against Arsenal. Big implications at the bottom of the table. And then you've got Newcastle Spurs as well on Sunday. Again, 4th against 5th, I believe that is.
Huge.
So
Yeah.
just huge games across the board. There's not like a team playing 10th against 11th or 9th against 12th or anything like that. Big implications. And I think the picture will become much clearer after this weekend's games in the Premier League in terms of perhaps the title race, top 4, as well as the battle at the bottom.
Yeah, I mean, touching on the United games, the Newcastle and Spurs game has me concerned because if Newcastle get 3 points there, they close the gap on us, I believe. I don't know if they actually overtake us. No, so they go level on points and they
have a superior goal difference though.
Superior goal difference, yeah. And whilst I'm absolutely delighted we're in the FA Cup semi-final and Europa League, like other competitions, it is again just falling behind on points. And you don't really want games in hand at this point in the season. But for us, it'd be great if that ended 1-1 and then just pull away after. That'd be fantastic. In terms of the Europa League game tonight, I think it's a tricky one because Sevilla this season are really, really not a great outfit. They're struggling in the league. They don't particularly play any kind of good football, but in the Europa League they just have this know-how. And I know the first leg was a freak result given the nature of especially their second goal. The first one completely avoidable. Malacia had a moment of madness leaving that ball. And United could have scored about 5 in that game. But I guess that's what happens if you don't take all your chances. So it'll be intriguing. It'll be an intriguing second leg, especially without Bruno Fernandes, which is a humongous loss. He's been incredible no matter where he's been asked to play this season for United. Right, left, centre, does not matter.
Yeah.
He's performed admirably throughout. So without him, that is a huge loss. However, we do have the returns of Luke Shaw, Marcus Rashford, Marcel Sabitzer, and Tyrell Malacia. Yet to be seen who starts out of those. But it'll be a tricky one tonight. It will be a tricky one. I know some fans would not be overly upset if we were to exit the competition, purely for the fact that how many games we've played and the run-in for the top 4 in the league and the FA Cup. I think everyone's focus at the moment, if you're a United fan, is to stop Man City from winning the FA Cup. So you wanna put all the eggs in that basket. The temptation's there to do so. But I do think if United play as well as they can, they should have too much for Sevilla tonight. However, Sevilla do have that Europa League pedigree, so I hate to be a fence sitter, but it's a horrible game to call. If it was just a throwaway game, United all day, but given Sevilla's love relationship with the Europa League, it's hard to bet against them. As for Sunday, Brighton, that is going to be a hell of a game because Brighton do not shy away from anybody. They don't care who they're playing. They will play their football, and it is glorious at times. And it's going to have some key battles around the pitch. I think if Wan-Bissaka does start, it'd be very interesting to see how Mitoma and Wan-Bissaka go head-to-head. Arguably the best one-on-one defender in the league. It's hard to say if there's many better in the world, forget the league. And he has his downsides for sure, but defensively, one-on-one, incredible. And Mitoma, master dribbler. You've seen what he's done to some of the fullbacks in the league this season, had him on toast. So that's just one of a few battles that will be really interesting to see how that pans out. I do expect United to go through because I think, again, there will be that desire to stop City and to win another trophy ourselves. More importantly, of course. So I do think United will progress. I think it'll be a close game. But I do see a United victory there. And for City in City's game, I think Sheffield United, no disrespect to them, but they're going to get destroyed, no matter what side City put out. Destruction awaits there. I am afraid for Sheffield United. I would love to be wrong more than ever, more than ever. Come on, you Blades.
It's not happening. You know it's not happening.
It ain't happening. It ain't happening. Unfortunately, but yeah, that's where I stand on the United games. I expect progression in both ties, really. But if I was to say I'm unsure of one more than the other, I would say tonight.
Yeah, I think just to follow up quickly there, I think the Europa League, they were the better team in the first leg. I mean, that goes without saying, absolutely dominant. I could not believe the decision, how Bruno Fernandes gets a yellow card in that situation. But that's a topic.
This is something we need to get into. Accountability of referees, and it may be the first episode where I curse, but I'm sure we'll get to that in good time.
Yeah, but I think you alluded to it, that second own goal. I mean, I've never seen anything like it. It's so unfortunate for Harry Maguire. And they were dominant and they were the better team. And I expect them to be the better team tonight. And I think Eric Ten Hag talks about the emotion of the game. And I think as long as United manage that well today and let their football do the talking, I do fancy them to come through. I think they could do with avoiding extra time, just given that the games are coming thick and fast for them, especially Brighton, going up against a Brighton team, which we know kind of make you defend the entire pitch. They space out, it's attacking, it's probably going to be a relatively open game, like you mentioned. So I do expect them to sneak through today. I think they're the better team. As for Sunday, that should just be an amazing game. And there's a part of me, I feel like Brighton is perhaps Ayoub's second favourite team because he's always telling me about their virtues on and off the pitch. But I mean, they are a real success story, let's be very clear. But I think on the basis that Man City should come through Sheffield United in the other semi-final, the game's set up beautifully for an FA Cup final between both Manchester clubs. And I think that would be pretty amazing to see. I don't know what the chronology of the fixtures is in terms of the FA Cup final being played, as to when it's played in terms of season-ending FA Cup final, potentially a Champions League final for Manchester City. But yeah, you're right. Man United will, if they do get to that game, they will have plenty of motivation to deny Manchester City in the FA Cup. So yeah, great games ahead.
Great games ahead. And I feel like talking about United, I have been blessed with this lighting again. So hopefully that carries over to the team. Spotify viewers, there's a huge ray of light on my face right now. If you have
the
no
second
idea
coming, Jesus is here.
But what do you think? Are you just on that Brighton United game?
It's I think it's too close to call because Brighton are you're right. It's a club that I've got so much admiration for. In a sense, if you're a club like Leeds, it's what you wish for. It's what you wish your club was. Because it's a club which is not a massive club. It's not got a huge fan base, but it's been brilliantly run. Great administration, wonderful recruitment, and you see the fruits of that dedication. So, and it's a fantastic team. So, I don't think it's an easy game at all for Manchester United. I think both sides will probably consider themselves to be sort of favourites. So, I certainly think Brighton aren't afraid of anybody, and I mean anybody in the Premier League. So a cracking game. It's a mouth-watering game, and I think with the first game, I don't even think it's worthwhile talking about the first game. It's an insult.
You clearly don't know any Sheffield United fans.
Yeah. Shout out to all the Sheffield United fans out there. We mean no harm. But yeah, that is gonna wrap things up for this episode of Just Onside, guys. But before we go, given it is Eid tomorrow, we would love to wish our viewers, I'm going to say around the world, Eid Mubarak, guys. Have you guys, just a little insight for our viewers, what will you guys be doing with your days tomorrow?
Food.
Oh, mate, the food. Oof.
Food and family. And obviously a couple of trips to mosque as well. Obviously, me, especially being a religious man.
Yeah, of course. Food and family in that order as well, are you right?
Yeah.
It's golf, food, family.
Well, it's got to be food, Fulham, and family. That's the problem. Yeah, so let's see.
That's why it's that. But yeah, thank you again, guys, for joining us. Ayub, Uwais, as always. Remember, guys, like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. Hit the bell for a notification for our next episode whenever that drops, which will be early next week. But yeah, thank you for joining us on this episode of Just Onside. And in the meantime, don't stray